We are at war with Russia. Or perhaps more correctly, we have lost a war with Russia without a battle. We are no longer a sovereign nation. We are no longer a democracy. We are no longer a free people. We are the victims of a bloodless coup. So far, a bloodless coup, engineered by Russia with, at best, the traitorous indifference of the Republican Party and Donald John Trump, a man who, to borrow a phrase from another December long ago, will live in infamy. In 5 weeks' time, unless desperate measures are taken, we will hand over the government to a man who lost the popular vote by more than Woodrow Wilson or Jimmy Carter won it, a man whom the Russians wanted to run our country for them, a man whom the Russians got to run our country for them, a man for whom the Russians interfered with our elections, which if we did it to another country would be described as an act of war. And in this country, we have conceded defeat.
But it is the night of broken glass. It is the Nazis are here. They have finally walked through that door. When I was comparing people to Nazis and the Muslim Brotherhood, and everybody said, oh, no, they're not Nazis. Well, now you can see that they are. Now it is your choice to whether you see it or not, and God will not hold us blameless. When I was talking about this for the last few years, I was telling you these things were coming and saying God will not hold us blameless. You have to prepare for these things. I am telling you right now, they are happening. You can find the information. You can actually see the video. There is no excuse. No excuse will be accepted at the end of our lives. No excuse will be accepted. We all say never again. Well, it's happening right now. It is happening right now. And you will be held accountable.
Well, on a lighter note, my name is Jerry Kroth. I'm an associate professor emeritus, a psych professor, and I've done a number of videos on propaganda. And this one I've saved sort of for last. It is more challenging, and it's going to test you more than others have. So let us take a look at, we're going to talk about a few new techniques that have not been talked about in previous lectures. This is propaganda on the left, and then we'll do propaganda on the right. So if you look at these two pictures, you say, where's the propaganda? I don't see any propaganda here. That's a picture of Hillary Clinton giving a talk, a speech. There's Donald Trump giving a speech. There's no deceit. There's no deception. Nobody's trying to pull the wool over our eyes. I just see those things as pieces of reality. Well, that's part of what we are doing here in uncovering the underlying truth that is not being shown. For example, that's the Hillary Clinton rally that she's speaking at, and that's the Donald Trump rally that he's speaking at. So by cropping those pictures, you get a completely different impression than what reality actually is. Now, there are two techniques I want to introduce here. One is called reframing. Reframing in verbally is when you take a word and you twist it around and get an opposite meaning. For example, a crisis becomes an opportunity. Oh, isn't that nice? A problem becomes a challenge. So by changing the words, the context, and also the picture, the graphic, you can alter the meaning of what you're looking at. There's a more important propaganda technique here called the bandwagon effect. Numbers are important for the bandwagon effect to take hold. If we say 3 people on the bandwagon and know that hundreds have not joined, then the reverse effect will take place and we will be loath to join. If you walk by a restaurant and there are 2 people sitting in the restaurant, you think, I don't think I'm going to go to that restaurant, right? And if it's full of people, on the other hand, you think, well, there must be something really good here. That's called the bandwagon effect. Now, hidden from view, we're going to August 25th, 2016. By that time, Trump had 10 times more participants in his rallies than Clinton, 168,000 versus 10,000 for Clinton. But the media, the mainstream media, which is the liberal media, or I suppose, NBC, CBS, ABC, PBS, and CNN, did not report and show these discrepancies. They had close-in shots virtually all the time. These are Clinton rallies that you didn't see on television. Now, let's take a look at Trump rallies, which you also didn't see mainly on television. So, by using close-in shots, you control for the negative bandwagon effect. I don't want to go to that restaurant; nobody's there. And the positive bandwagon effect. My God, look at how much popularity there is. You control that, eliminate it, and kind of censor it. Really, this is Hillary Clinton.
And I just have to tell you, I go to, as you might guess, a lot of states. And it's one of the best parts of running for office, particularly for president, because you get to travel around, you get to meet people.
Notice she turns around to talk to the audience. One of the reasons is there were only 171 people in attendance at this rally, and most of them were set to be behind her to give the impression that there's this huge crowd. So Trump complained about this news coverage, didn't get very far, but one day he finally got his moment.
But I want the cameras to span the room. Go ahead, fellas, watch. They don't turn them. They don't turn them. They don't turn them. Go ahead, turn them. Look, turn the camera. Go ahead. Turn the camera, ma'am. Turn the camera. You with the blonde hair, turn the camera. Show the room. Go ahead. They don't turn them. What about, hey, you in the center, why don't you turn your camera? Show them how many people come to these rallies. Turn them. Go ahead, turn them. Go ahead.
Well, there was an obvious reluctance to do that. Now, if you look at this data, by September 2016, Trump had 337,000 people who had come to his rallies. Clinton had 13,970. By October, Trump was averaging 6,000 people per event. Hillary's average was 380. So if you took these two studies, if you get an average discrepancy, it's 20 to 1. It's not small change at all. So by doing that, even though 20 times more people attended Trump rallies than Clinton, the polls show them neck and neck virtually throughout the entire campaign. Okay. Now, psychology is not an exact science. We can't quantify how much of this bandwagon effect played a role. I mean, the negative subtracting out Hillary's low attendance and subtracting out Trump's large attendance could have affected those numbers on how many people wanted to vote for Trump and Clinton. We don't know whether it was 2 points, 4 points, 8 points, but clearly there was deception here. This is propaganda. When you're not portraying reality accurately, and these close-in shots did not portray reality accurately. So some people say, "Oh no, I don't believe any of this stuff. Kroth's making it up." Here are your sources, just so you know I'm not coming up with this on my own. All right, for this segment. Now let's go to the right and give our compatriots equal time on the propaganda analysis front. Here we're going to talk about another technique called denial and distraction. If you remember in earlier lectures, denial and distraction means look over here, look over here, look over here, because we don't want you to look over here. We're trying to distract you from the hidden truth. So we're going to be talking about repeal and replace Obamacare and the Republican propaganda on that issue. But I need to give you background to build this thesis. So here's some background before we get there. I wrote a book called Duped, Delusion, Denial, and the End of the American Dream. Since most of this stuff is very contemporary, I wanted to put out a second edition, and I decided it would be better with a different title. So the new title is called Implosion, Delusion, Denial, and the Prospect of Collapse. So we're going to talk here, all of this comes from that book, called The Top 1%. This will lead us into Obamacare and that discussion. So if you look at the richest, the wealthiest 400 people in the United States, they have more wealth, more net worth than 150 million Americans. So that's what 400 people looks like right there. That's what 400 people look like right there. So imagine they're the wealthiest 400 gathered in this spot. Well, they have the net worth of 150 million Americans. That's how much of America they own, those 400 people. Some people would call that relatively egregious, right? All right, the top 1%, now that's not the 400, that's a larger group. The top 1% have an average accumulated wealth of $14 million. That's the top 1%. From 1979 until 2005, the income of the top 1% increased 176%. The bottom 20%, their income over that long period of time increased 6%. Okay? So if you look at the wealth distribution of the top 1% and then the next 4%, you've got the top 10% get 83% of the wealth of this country. Okay? That's the wealth effect. That's wealth inequality. And here is a graph that is really worth your time. Take a look, go to 1980, okay, and take a look at the red line. The red line shows what 90% of the country owns, their wealth. And look how that line goes down and down and down. Look at the white line, which is the top 1%. It goes from 1980, it goes up and up and up. It more than doubles. Okay, the rich are really getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. That's obviously what a lot of people have been talking about. So take a look now at the 2016 election, because now we're starting to think about the implications here. These are all the people that wanted to be president of the United States. And Jeb Bush is worth $20 million. Lincoln Chafee, you don't even remember him. He ran and left. He's worth $30 million. Hillary Clinton is worth $52 million. Carly Fiorina, $60 million. All of these people qualify as multimillionaires, as part of the top 1%. Kasich seems to be a populist. He's worth $9 million. The only people in this picture who are not multimillionaires are Mark Rubio and Bernie Sanders. So some people argue that we really don't live in a democracy. We live in a plutocracy, which is owned and governed by the wealthy. And we just are sort of being duped into the idea that we're choosing them in a democratic process. The Republicans are known as the party of wealth, the party of capital, and if you start looking around, the Republicans have a majority in Congress. They have the majority in the Senate. They just captured the presidency. They have the Supreme Court. They have a majority in all the state legislatures, and they have a majority of all governorships. They've locked it down. But a Pew poll shows that only 38% of Americans say they are Republicans. That's an interesting discrepancy, I would think. Okay, but the country is kind of locked down by a one-party system now. Now, when we had our vote, we were choosing between a person who is in the top 1/10 of 1% and another person who is in the top 1/10 of 1%. Okay? Which multimillionaire 1/10 of 1%er shall lead us now? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. So now let's go and talk about Obamacare and why the Republicans, the party of wealth and wealth concentration, are so interested in repealing and replacing Obamacare. This has been going on for a long time. Here's Mitt Romney. He's worth $248 million. He's also in the top 1/10 of 1%.
Well, I think the president is hoping that we'll be diverted from the fact that Obamacare is going to get repealed. If I'm president, I will repeal Obamacare. And frankly, on the first day of my administration, I'll direct the Secretary of Health and Human Services to grant a waiver to all 50 states from Obamacare.
Now, they have attempted to do that 54 times. They haven't succeeded, but this is 2017, and there's a very strong likelihood that they will succeed in doing that. So when we're going to start talking about propaganda, we're talking about distraction and denial. Here are all the reasons we want to get rid of Obamacare, but what's the real reason? Okay, that's what we're after here. So what, again, are the reasons, gentlemen and ladies, that you want to repeal it? Well, here are some. Obamacare burdens doctors. You can't make your own health care decisions. It's unconstitutional. A repeal will improve the job situation. It's driving people out of business. Repeal will rescue people from a collapsing law. The Heritage Foundation, which is a right-wing think tank, added a couple new reasons. It imposes tax increases on the middle class. And Obamacare is upsetting the insurance market. So here's a sampling of that distracting opinion.
Momentum is building for the repeal of Barack Obama's health care bill. Obama's plan is 2,000 pages of the government grabbing power, squeezing employers and burdening doctors. A judge ruled that part of it was even unconstitutional. Americans deserve a better health care plan that empowers families and doctors to make their own decisions. Politicians, get it right this time. Repeal Obamacare now.
Even higher, the law is collapsing. And so we've got to rescue people from the collapsing of this law and fix this problem.
No, I mean, repealing Obamacare, for one thing, I think it would help the job situation. Anyone who knows, anyone who runs a small business, and I know many, that they're not hiring, they're downsizing, they're often going out of business.
What's the truth? What's the hidden truth? If that's all just there to distract us, what is the hidden truth? Well, this is what Democrats say. Republicans are hell-bent on repealing Obamacare. They don't mention it would rob from the vast majority to give a windfall to the wealthy. Repealing Obamacare would immediately benefit the top 1% with a tax cut of $37,000. The top 10th of 1% would get an average tax cut of $207,000. Those 400 people we saw in the beginning, they would get, if you repealed Obamacare, each of them would get a check for $7 million. So there's a study on the tax consequences of repealing Obamacare, and you can see that the top 1% gets $37,000 each. The top 1/10 of 1%, which is 16,000 families, gets a check for $207,000. 1,016,000 households profit from the repeal of Obamacare, and nobody else does. So it isn't the middle class that you're rescuing. It isn't preventing insurance rates from rising. It isn't saving small business. It's not doing what's right for the country. It isn't eliminating government waste and inefficiency. It isn't giving people more choice. It's something else indeed. It gives the wealthiest Americans more tax relief, more money in their pockets, and no one who is supporting the repeal of Obamacare talks about it. Okay? No one stands up and says, we want to repeal Obamacare because we want to give our richest and wealthiest patrons a huge tax cut and windfall profit. That's why we want to repeal it. That is not being stated by anyone on the right. It's not that it isn't true. Now, the sad face of this is Americans talk about this health care, that health care, and we have our debates, but if we go outside of our country, we realize how really dysfunctional our healthcare system is. If you compare it to France, the World Health Organization says that the French healthcare system is the best in the world. Okay? Everyone in France is covered. It costs 50% what American healthcare costs. Okay? If you go to get an MRI in France, it costs $280. In the United States, it's close to 5 times more than that. A filling from a dentist is $30. Here, it's between $100 and $200. Life expectancy in France is 2 years higher than ours. We have 1.7 million bankruptcies that are filed due to unpaid medical bills. And it's been estimated that 45,000 Americans die every year because they didn't have enough money to see a doctor. So there are a lot of figures thrown around, but a conservative figure is that if Obamacare is repealed, more than between 6 and 10 million Americans will become uninsured. It's a lot of people. So, if that ruffles your feathers and you think I'm making up these statistics, there are the sources for that particular segment. Let's go and discuss. I've had 1.2 million people watch my videos, and a few 100,000 have watched my videos on propaganda. Now, if you're one of those people that has watched all of those propaganda videos, you're getting close to graduation. But you're not quite there yet. Now, I told you in the beginning, this is going to be a bit of a test for you, okay? So here's the nature of the test. When I read people's comments about my videos, maybe 20% are people who feel that I'm confirming their political biases. I don't intend to do that. I intend to talk about propaganda, the psychology of propaganda, increase consciousness about media literacy, but I'm not here to confirm your right or your left-wing political point of view. So let's take a look at it this way. Let's say you're a liberal, okay, and you hear somebody talking about right-wing propaganda. Well, you like that. That gives you a sense of confirmation. Look at those Fox News liars pulling the wool over our eyes. And if you're a liberal, you like to hear that kind of talk, and it makes you feel solid in your political orientation. Okay, now if you're a conservative and you hear someone talking about left-wing propaganda, that New York Times, CNN, PBS, all those lefties telling all these untruths, pulling the wool over our eyes, that also confirms your political biases. That's the easy part. Here's the hard part. When a liberal listens to a talk on liberal propaganda, no. There is no liberal propaganda. There is no left-wing media. There's no liberal. The New York Times is not a left-wing liberal this or that. That's not true. Check your sources. I think Kroth is a closet conservative. Kill the messenger while you're at it. Okay? Now, the same thing happens on the other side. If a conservative has to confront right-wing propaganda, no. Fox News is our only hope. How can you call that propaganda? I know a person who says, thank God for Glenn Beck. So if you are conservative in your orientation and you hear a talk about right-wing propaganda, you want to shut this video off. You want to leave and say Kroth is a closet liberal. Okay, so a lot of people have already turned off this video. If I'm talking to you, I'm talking to my future graduates. The other people have gone because they've been watching these videos to confirm their politics. That's not what we're doing. Okay, so when you see, when you're a liberal and you hear about left-wing propaganda, that causes you cognitive dissonance. The same is true if you're conservative. That causes you cognitive dissonance. It's the ability to put your politics to the side that is the issue here. Okay? Because we're not talking about that. We're talking about the psychology of propaganda. Okay. So if you're a therapist, it's called countertransference in psychology. I'm a psychologist. If a therapist's parent was an alcoholic, and now you have a client who's an alcoholic, you need to do some work in filtering out your own personal stuff so that you can help this person objectively without projecting your own stuff into it. That's called countertransference. All good therapists have to go through that kind of training. Well, we're kind of doing something like that. Let's go back now to the left. Get ready. More feathers to be ruffled, I suppose. This is a propaganda on an issue called the child migrant crisis. It's another journey into distraction and denial. I don't know if you remember this story, but a couple of years ago, there were thousands of children who were coming to the United States alone, unaccompanied minors just coming into the United States and being held in detention centers. Do you remember that story? Well, from 2014, 2015, 2016, a total of 98,000 of these children showed up on our borders. And it was a huge event. There were lots of stories in the media. And here are some pictures of these minors in these detention centers, and they're young. Okay, you start feeling very sad for them. So what's going on? Well, now the liberal media is starting to tell a narrative. And that narrative is that these children are abused, they are running away from gangs, running away from murder. This is a story of Nodwin, who had to leave. These are three countries, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, where murders are high and gang violence is high. And they left, they escaped. Okay, they didn't go to something, they left something. So this is another PBS story. You can't read that. Here's what it said. Here's a profile of one of those 98,000 children. He'd grown up mostly on the streets in Guatemala City. His abusive father a crack addict, and his mother everywhere but around, leaving him with a thin, green-eyed prostitute friend who would sometimes have sex with Johns right there next to him. Those are the kind of people that came across our borders. That's the story, that's the narrative. It's everywhere.
This year, about 60,000 migrant children are expected to make the dangerous trek and cross into the United States from Central America and Mexico alone. Most are seeking an escape from gruesome conditions in their home countries. But when they arrive, life doesn't get much better for them. Ev Mead, new director of the University of San Diego's Trans-Border Institute, is here to talk about the problem. Ev, tell me, how desperate are the lives of these children in their native countries that they're willing to make this very dangerous journey into the United States alone?
Well, there's a dramatic range. I would say, you know, in some cases, these are kids whose parents have been killed or disappeared in drug violence. In other cases, and many of the cases from Honduras and El Salvador in particular, these are kids who forcibly recruited into gangs, girls who are forced to be the quote-unquote girlfriend of a gang member, people who've been threatened with rape and murder, people who've been targeted by the police forces for an association with a gang in one of these countries, whether it's a real association or not. Some of these kids also are fearing violence in their own homes. You know, there's a good probably 1 in 5, according to one recent study, who their parents or the people who are taking care of them, you know, have beaten them or abused them or abandoned them in different ways. So it's a full range of cases.
So the New York Times, that was PBS there. New York Times does a story on a boy named Anthony, very similar, escaping abuse, murder, gangs, crack-addicted parents, etc.
My name is Angela Salaya and I'm 9 years old.
Brandon works out to build the muscles of a man. Ironically, it was his strength that forced him to leave Guatemala and make his way to the U.S. border. A street gang was after him.
When I was 14, the gang saw me big. They paid more attention to me. They wanted to corrupt me.
And so he left.
6 in 10 women and girls are raped in transit. Girls tell us anecdotally, I hear from lots of their lawyers across the country, that they're advised in shelters and by other adults to take birth control before they cross the border as a precaution against a rape that's basically inevitable.
And how young are some of these girls?
So this is something that's really changed. If you look at the age profile of the kids who are coming, a couple of years ago, it was a small percentage that were under 14. Now it's about a quarter of the kids who are coming are under 14 years old. So there's many young children. I talked to a Border Patrol agent just a couple of weeks ago who told me about detaining an 8-year-old child.
There's Judy Woodruff doing another one. So the composite picture of this so-called propaganda is that these kids are abused. They have dysfunctional homes, crack addicted parents, gangs that are after them, and they are running for their lives. Before I talk about my own strange feelings that we're developing here, President Obama came out and said, this is a humanitarian crisis. We have all these thousands of children in detention centers. We need to appropriate money for them to house them and repatriate them. Okay, so Congress quickly passes a authorization to take care of these children. All right, we see pictures of them in these crowded dormitories. We see them, sleeping like this, and our hearts are breaking. So that's the picture, and I'm sitting there saying, I don't know why I can't get into this story. I have a suspicion which I cannot confirm. I have a gut feeling that this is not true, and I'm thinking, what's wrong with you, Jerry? Why are you being so conspiratorial? I just feel that this is not logical. It's counterintuitive to me. Okay, so my feelings are this. Like, if I looked up the three countries in Central America that do not have a high level of murder and gang violence: Costa Rica, Panama, Nicaragua. All right, so if you are an abused child running away from violence, Costa Rica is 400 miles away, and they speak Spanish there. Nicaragua is 175 miles away. Go there. I mean, if your parents are crack addicted and a prostitute is taking care of you, or the gangs are after you, you need to run away. That's a good place to run away. Panama is 588 miles. I mean, if you want to, the State Department says that one of the safest cities in Mexico is Merida. Okay, it's 388 miles away. They speak Spanish there. Okay, that's a good place to seek refuge. And I was thinking, well, people in Libya take boats. You could take a boat to Cuba. Why go 1,200 miles to the United States border where they don't speak Spanish? What's going on here? If you're fleeing abuse, murder, gang violence, rape, and all these other terrible things, there's something else happening that is not being talked about. All of this stuff is distraction. There's a hidden truth here. What is it? If escape from abuse is the nature of the distraction, then what exactly is being denied? What is the essence of the propaganda? What is the truth here? And I have to admit, at this time, I had no proof. I just had a gut feeling. I had no evidence whatsoever. And I was looking at myself saying, well, your thinking is wrong here, Jerry. So the truth slowly emerges. Obama in 2014 announced an amnesty program, an executive order, where immediately 2.5 billion illegal immigrants were granted some kind of legal status. Quote, specifically, Obama's new amnesty program will give illegal immigrants who have been in the United States for at least 5 years and who are parents of U.S. citizens or legal residents a 3-year work permit. This permit will allow them to have a Social Security number, get a driver's license. Pew estimates 3.5 million people will qualify for that program. What does that have to do with this influx? I come across a journalist named Neil Monroe who basically said, you know what happened to those, because after Obama got that money, the stories about these children stopped. They just stopped. You thought, what did they do? Send all 98,000 of these children back home with that $3.5 billion? What happened to these kids? Are they still in those detention centers? Did they get adopted by foster parents? What happened? Well, Monroe said 90% of them were reunited with their parents who were here all along, who were here illegally. Not all of them were here illegally, but 90% of those children you saw came to be reunited with their parents. They weren't escaping abuse. Well, I learned, this is what Monroe said, Obama's amnesty program has caused a 12-fold increase in numbers pouring across the border. I wrote to Monroe and I said, how come I haven't seen this stuff, this data that you have? Where did you get this data from? Because I have not come across it. And he said, you need to stop reading the New York Times and start looking at independent media. So I thought, well, Monroe is known as kind of a muckraker. I don't think he is good enough to put in my video as a reliable source. So I looked at the Department of Health and Human Services, which has a story, didn't get much attention at all, which also said that 90% of those 98,000 children were placed in the United States with either a parent or a relative. So I thought, well, why didn't those parents who saw their children in these detention centers come and get them? Well, maybe they were illegal and they were afraid to come and get them. Okay, I don't have any proof for that one, but it did cross my mind. But here are some other quotations. The 90% claim contradicts progressive media magnified claims that migrant children should be treated as refugees because they are involuntarily fleeing broken families, violence, and crime. Obama's amnesty order incentivized more illegal immigration. The left is in favor of immigration reform. They're in favor of the DREAM Act, and they certainly don't want it to come out that if you do that, you're incentivizing more illegal immigration. And so the narrative is created. These children are fleeing abuse, crime, violence, and gangs. Okay, so I wanted to say, well, did we send these children home? Because if we did, then the Neil Monroe story is false. Well, between 2012 and 2015, 178,000 migrant children arrived in the United States. 7,600 were deported. In other words, 95% were not. So if you crossed the Rio Grande and got into the United States, you have a 95% chance of staying. All right, so another way I thought, well, let's check out this story. Maybe PBS is right, and let's check that out. How many people went to Costa Rica? It's a pretty place. It's not far away from these bad spots. It couldn't be any more difficult to get into than getting into the United States. How many people actually were refugees and came there for safety? Well, in 2014, there were 38 applications submitted from El Salvador, 420 total. In 2015, they had 889 applications for safety and refuge. So give me a break. This theory that they're leaving violence is just not holding any water. Conclusion is, regrettably, through distraction and denial, the liberal media attempted to deny the reality that 98,000 migrant children between 2014 and 2016 came to the United States to be reunited with their parents and relatives. Instead, the media distracted American consciousness by repeatedly insisting these children were fleeing abuse, gangs, rape, and murder in their home countries. No one denies that abuse, murder, and gangs exist in Central America, but that is not the reason they came to the U.S. That was a foil to distract from the real reason they made that journey. There are your sources if you think you're making all this up. Now, let's go back to our friends on the right and look at right-wing propaganda. And another group of you, if you're still watching, will have your feathers ruffled again, I suppose. This one is the denial of climate change, which is primarily an enterprise of the right.
So Obama's talking about all of this with the global warming and that, and a lot of it's a hoax. It's a hoax. I mean, it's a money-making industry, okay? It's a hoax.
The president has tweeted climate change skepticism at least 115 times, including a claim that the concept of global warming was
manufactured by the Chinese.
Global warming. New Yale study says 57% of teens understand that global warming is caused mostly by humans' activities. Is it really now?
I don't believe climate change is real. I think this is global warming hysteria and alarmism.
So-called global warming which isn't happening.
Global warming is illusory. We're actually going through a period of global cooling.
Calling carbon dioxide a pollutant? Come on.
Look how much pollution I just put out.
A lot of it would be laughable if it weren't so dangerous.
This is our Fox News global warming alert for you. It is freezing.
Blizzard versus global warming. Who do you believe, Al Gore or your freezing butt?
A pre-winter into winter storm like Europe hasn't seen in years. Forget about all that global warming talk.
It's not global warming, I'll tell you that.
Another storm could be headed this way next week. Global warming, where are you? We want you back.
Is the planet warming? And if it's warming, is it the result of human activity? Because that's what the Paris Accord was designed to address.
I understand, and the studies right now would tell you that we're not warming right now.
Really?
No.
What's this all about? 99% of all the scientists say
well,
that the science is
they
in with
picked
warming.
the 74 that they wanted to say that, and then they self-selected that 74 scientists, or 67, I can't remember the number, and then they got that agreement. They got them to say that. If you go and poll, what does the actual data say? I don't think that you'll see 99%. You may see 75-25. You may see 25-70. I don't know that. Nobody knows, because we've had this political mantra out there that says, well, if you doubt what we said, you're a flat earther.
So goes that narrative. Now, another propaganda technique here beyond naked denial, which is what you're seeing, is an appeal to authority, to bring in authorities, scientists and intelligent people who contradict the thought. That is another element. That's another propaganda technique. So here's John Coleman from Fox News, a weatherman.
Are you real concerned about this global warming?
I'm only concerned about the incredible frenzy and hype for something that's a total myth. That concerns me a lot, because people are going hysterical about it. It's amazing to me how upset so many people are, and how many billions of dollars apparently our governments are going to spend of our tax dollars to combat something that isn't real. That has my attention, believe me. As a scientist, I know that global warming doesn't really exist at all in any sense of significance, and that we have nothing to worry about.
Thank you, John. He's a scientist, really. I looked his credentials up. I could not find a single scientific peer-reviewed paper he ever wrote. Maybe I missed something. But all I found is that John has a bachelor's degree in journalism, and he's not even got a degree in meteorology. But he's a scientist, he says, to a few million people who absorb this information. Right-wing media, the Heritage Foundation appears again. That's the right-wing think tank with Wee Hock Soon, a astrophysicist who works for the Harvard-Smithsonian Center of Astrophysics. Talk about a prestigious title. He writes papers denying or changing the narrative about climate change. And the New York Times and Boston Globe exposed the fact that he received $1.2 million from the fossil fuel industry. The Smithsonian said Soon had violated disclosure standards. All right. Where does the funding come from? Well, the Koch family is one of the major contributors. They're worth $82 billion. That's the top 1/10 of 1%, one of those 400 people you saw earlier. And they have poured a lot of money into climate change denial programs. Scientific American discovered that there are 140 foundations of dark money, they call it, which funneled over $500 million to 100 climate denial organizations from 2003 to 2010. So there's a lot of money behind the propaganda. Now, the effects of propaganda are that you assimilate the information and your mind and your attitudes change. So here are some startling statistics. In 2012, 67% of Republicans said they thought global warming was exaggerated. 57% do not believe that scientists believe global warming is occurring. That's a majority. In 2015, of 278 Republicans in Congress, only 8 made comments accepting the reality of global warming. That's 3%. another sad article in Science magazine showed that of 1,500 high school science teachers, 30% are teaching that global warming is a natural phenomenon unrelated to human activity. The propaganda has been working. Now, what if you say, well, I believe that. This is not true. There is no such thing. It's all a hoax. I agree with the president. Well, the evidence, I'm not going to reiterate all the evidence, but I'll just give you some here. In 2003, 90% of scientists were surveyed, and 90% believed global warming was human and man-made. That survey was repeated in 2011, and 97% believed that. It wasn't 67 or 70 people that were cherry-picked. It was 1,372 PhDs, okay? And only 3% had doubts. Now, in 2016, a peer-reviewed scientific paper of all the surveys of scientists concludes, quote, the finding of 97% consensus that humans are causing recent global warming in published climate research is robust and consistent with other surveys of climate scientists and peer-reviewed studies. Okay, so that ought to settle where scientists, not John Coleman, but where scientists with PhDs in these areas are, where their opinions are found. So that isn't all. If you look at pictures of the North Pole from 1979 to 2003 to 2010, it doesn't take a genius to realize that our planet is changing, and quite seriously. 11 of the past 12 years have been the hottest on record since 1850, despite cold fronts that Fox News publicizes. The global averages are astonishingly above average. Two separate studies of ice cores in Antarctica show that CO2 levels have not been this high in 650,000 years, and carbon dioxide is highly correlated to temperature. The graphs are all over the place. When CO2 goes up, temperature goes up. And there are numerous studies that show that relationship. So the conclusion here is that for more than 2 decades, right-wing media and the Republican Party has disseminated falsehoods denying the reality of global warming.
But there isn't even one study that can be produced that shows that carbon dioxide is a harmful gas.
Every time we exhale carbon dioxide.
We don't know what those other cycles were caused by in the past. Could be dinosaur flagellants, or who knows.
Okay, well, there are your sources to buttress the evidence that has been presented. Now, we are going to summarize this talk, and we're getting ready for graduation. So here's a summary of what we said and talked about here in reverse order. So the last thing we talked about was global warming. What's the source of the propaganda? It comes from the right. What are the techniques used? Denial, appeal to authority. John Coleman, the scientist. What's the nature of the lie? Propaganda is a form of lying. Well, the nature of the lie in this case is global warming is a hoax. Okay? What's the nature of the truth? Global warming is real and an imminent danger to the planet. That's the truth. What's the motivation for the propaganda? It's to protect the fossil fuel industry and other industries. So let's go to the one that preceded that, the child migrant crisis. The source of propaganda comes from the left. What are the techniques used? Distraction and denial. Nature of the lie. Child refugees are fleeing abuse and gangs in Central America. That's why they're showing up on our borders. What is the nature of the truth? Of the 98,000 child migrants coming to the United States between 2014 and 2016, 90% sought to be reunited with parents and relatives in the United States with hopes of amnesty from Obama's executive orders. What is the motivation for the propaganda? Draw attention away from amnesty as an incentive for more illegal immigration. Okay. So when we went earlier to another right-wing segment, repealing Obamacare. The techniques used here are distraction and denial. What's the nature of the lie? Repealing Obamacare will rescue the middle class and save small business. Okay. What's the nature of the truth? Repealing Obamacare will give huge tax breaks to the very wealthiest Americans. What is the motivation for the propaganda? Draw attention away from windfall profits for the wealthiest 1% and focus people on something else. So the final thing was our very first story, which was election coverage. This is propaganda that came from the left. The techniques used were reframing and the bandwagon effect. Do you remember that? What's the nature of the lie? Make it seem like Clinton and Trump rallies were similar in size by framing those pictures very close up. What's the nature of the truth? Trump rallies had about 20 times more attendees than Clinton rallies. Why? What's the motivation for the propaganda? Equate the rallies to prevent a bandwagon windfall for Trump or a negative bandwagon effect for Clinton. Okay? So, it's graduation day. If you got here and you're still watching, I think you qualify for your diploma because you have certain outstanding characteristics. One is you have open-mindedness. Secondly, you have a tolerance for ambiguity and cognitive dissonance. You can take your politics and put it over here and listen to the psychology of propaganda and media literacy, all right? And you can place that above your personal political issues. Congratulations, you got here. I don't know how many of you actually got here, but congratulations, and you deserve that diploma. Thank you very, very much for watching.